But on a serious point, today the Prime Minister's flagship one-in, one-out deal to return illegal Channel migrants to France has finally come into force today, with detentions set to begin by the end of the week. Now, the agreement means that the UK will finally be able to send people crossing the Channel in small boats back to France, in exchange, we're told, for asylum seekers with ties to Britain. However, opposition parties have wasted no time in vocally criticising the deal. They will only see apparently 50 people a week return to France. Well, this year has seen a weekly average of more than 800 people making that crossing. And of course, on some days, it's been almost 1,000 people. Well, we can now speak with the Reform UK MP for Runcorn on Helsby, and of course, that is Sarah Pochin. Sarah, welcome to the show. Always a pleasure. Can I get your take on this this revelatory deal? It starts today, one in, one out. We're told the first of its kind. Fret no more. The border chaos is over.
Good afternoon, Martin, and thank you so much for inviting me on the show. Look, this is just another example of Keir Starmer's love-in with Macron. We all know, don't we, that this is absolute nonsense. The British people don't believe these figures anymore. As you've just pointed out, on a good day, or a good day weather-wise at least, we might get 1,000 coming across on these boats. And Keir Starmer's talking about getting up to returning 50 a week. But how many do we get back coming the other way? I guarantee it'll be a lot more than 50. And also, this is only an 11-month deal. So it's absolute nonsense. But I'd like to make a much more important point, because this is just white noise, what we're talking about here. The much more important point, Martin, is that surely, when we look at the pictures you're showing there, the government is breaking the law, isn't it? If you looked at the Immigration Act of 1971, I can't see anywhere in there it says that we're allowed to let in criminals. And yet we claim that anyone that enters this country illegally is performing a criminal act. So how does that work? And then the government, by then forcing or telling the local authorities that they need to house and clothe and feed these illegal people coming into the country, and therefore criminals, are therefore telling the local authorities to also commit a criminal act.
Do you want to save a boatload of cash this summer, wherever you have a trip planned? The one thing you're going to need is access to the internet and on the go. And you can do that easily with Saily. Hit the link in the description to get 15% of your first eSIM plan ready for your trip, so you can browse to your heart's content. Saily gets you a local SIM card you can use when traveling, so you don't have to pay those crazy roaming fees just to send a message or check the latest news. Now, they've got plans in over 160 countries, 8 regions, so pretty much everywhere, wherever you're going, they'll be able to make sure you're connected. So how does it work? All you've got to do is this. Hit the link in the description to download the app. It will work on iOS or Android. Buy a plan. You can choose an amount of data and time frame that suits you best. And then just install the eSIM on your phone. When you land at your holiday destination, you can activate your plan instantly. And if that wasn't enough, Saily eSIMs only ever have to be installed once. So when you go on your next trip, you just buy a plan for a new country, turn that eSIM back on, and boom, you're back watching me on GBNews. I'll be using a Saily SIM on my next holiday because it's actually faster than some of the hotel Wi-Fis. You can get unlimited data if you want, so you can scroll away to your heart's content. And when you leave the hotel, you don't have to do that annoying thing of Wi-Fi hopping because you've got constant connectivity wherever you go. And they've got 24/7 support as well, and a full refund policy if your eSIM isn't compatible. So get sorted for your next trip. Download Saily using the link in the description below. And if you use the code NEWS at checkout, you'll get an exclusive 15% discount on us. So click the link, download Saily, and use the code NEWS at checkout.
Are you saying then that the Reform Party would, declare a state of national emergency on our borders and end this overnight?
I've been calling for that for some days now. I think Parliament should be recalled. I think we should be back in Westminster. You look at that boat, say there's 80 people on that boat, that equates to 10 houses in a constituency, houses of multiple occupancy. That's just an average sort of figure. But try and put it into those sort of perspectives. That is the impact it's having on communities up and down the country. And that is why people have had enough and are protesting. So absolutely, this is a national emergency.
And Sarah Pochin, on that note, the front page of the Express today, I know the Reform Party put their name to this. Britain is failing to keep women and girls safe, and this is incredible data from the CPS, the Crown Prosecution Service. They were asked by the newspaper how many asylum seekers have committed sex crimes on British soil. The answer is they don't know. They either don't record the data or they won't release the data. Sarah Pochin, what does that say to you?
Well, we know, don't we? Finally, we've got government figures that have come out saying that these migrants are 4 times more likely to commit rape, commit sexual assault against women and girls when they get here. That is a betrayal of the government, of women and girls, in my opinion. We don't know who is on these boats, whether they're terrorists, whether they have criminal records. We know nothing about them. But with or without those shocking suggestions, we know that they are committing sexual offences against women and girls in our communities. Mums don't feel safe to let their children, their girls, out to play. Girls and boys, I would imagine. But the point is, that's what these mums are peacefully protesting about. And as I say, that effectively is a betrayal of women and girls. How many more rapes do we need to happen? How many more sexual offences do we need to happen against people living in this country, in our communities, before we say enough is enough?
And Sarah Pochin, of course, it's only fair to point out that the vast majority of these people aren't committing sex crimes, but disproportionately, it is true that those from a certain nation, such as Afghanistan, are 22 times more likely. That is the facts. They are now out in the open. Sarah Pochin, as I have you here, I'd like to ask you about something of a furore that's happened within the Reform Party. On GBNews tonight, I interviewed Vanessa Frake. She is the Reform UK Party's new prison czar, prison governor, of course, in a previous life herself, an esteemed expert. But she's put the nose out of joint of quite a lot of Reform voters by suggesting that trans women, biological men, could be allowed into women's prisons. I want to get 2 questions from you. Do you think that should happen? And perhaps most importantly, will this be the Reform Party's policy? Sounds a bit woke.
Well, I can tell you that if one day I am Home Secretary, there will be no way that any trans male is allowed into a female prison. And secondly, I can make it quite clear that this is not Reform policy. I think what Vanessa Frake was probably, just expressing her own views, her own opinion. She's been a prison governor and maybe hasn't necessarily had to deal with this problem so much in the past. I don't know. I haven't spoken directly to Vanessa about why she made that comment, but I can tell you very, very clearly it wouldn't be a policy if I was in charge.
Sarah Pochin, would it not be simpler to say categorically, as a Supreme Court ruling has said, that no biological men, irrespective of what they claim to be, should ever be allowed into a women's prison or hospital ward or indeed any other private space? We just say on the show that no biological men will ever be allowed in women's prisons. That might put this to rest.
Yes, I 100% agree with you. That is 100% what I am saying.
OK, well, let's hope that there's some clarity in Reform on this item as we go forward. Sarah Pochin, thank you once again for joining us on the show from Runcorn. Always a pleasure to have you, Reform UK MP there for Runcorn and Helsby, Sarah Pochin. Now, regarding to one of the stories, we discussed about sex crimes by asylum seekers. The Home Office have told GBNews this: we're going further than any previous government has done to increase transparency around the volume and the type of offending by foreign nationals. Following the MOJ's publication this week on foreign national offenders within the prison population, the Home Office will later this year publish the first ever detailed breakdown of foreign nationals living in the community. Now, don't forget that, of course, that information has been long requested by journalists such as myself on GB News and a guest I've got on the short while on the show, Robert Bates from the Centre for Migration Control.